like a clear answer to it. According to the agreement with the private hospitals, last week they were to produce a full cost statement detailing the costs for the month of April. I asked last week if that would be published, but I didn't receive a response to that question. So the question is, will you make this detailed breakdown of costs available to TDs and the public? You have said, including today, that the model is open book. But for that to mean anything, will you open the books for the public so that we can see exactly what we are paying for, and so we can try to get to the bottom of why we are paying 4 times as much per bed as the NHS is paying in its similar agreement with private hospitals?
I thank Deputy Murphy. I have written back to the Deputy on some of the questions he's answered in this regard, and if I haven't answered all of them, I'm more than happy to, my office will come back to him as well. In relation to the full cost statement, my understanding is that all of these will be analysed by independent firms of accountants who will give a view then in relation to ensuring that it is a cost book approach, that also the Public Accounts Committee and the CNAG are obviously welcome to have a role. Whether the full cost statements will be published, I'll truthfully have to liaise with my department. I could imagine that there may well be information commercially sensitive to one entity in it, but I'll certainly have a conversation with the department officials and revert to the Deputy.
Fourth time I've raised this question and gotten various answers, but on the essence of publishing the information about the cost so we can establish why we're paying so much for the private hospitals, I'm not getting an answer. It was once to the Taoiseach and 3 times to the Minister. And repeatedly the phrase open book is used to explain it, but I don't understand what open book means if the books aren't actually open for people to be able to see. I got a response yesterday from the Minister for Finance, who refused to publish the final agreements with the private hospitals, so with the individual private hospitals, saying only that it could be considered, but it may be, quote, commercially sensitive. This is an issue of transparency. When hundreds of millions of euros are being handed over to the private hospitals, including owners like Denis O'Brien and Larry Goodman, we need to have the final agreements and the breakdown of costs published, or this could prove to be another scandal in the making. Concretely, I asked repeatedly if we are making payments, whether fees, interest or otherwise, to Denis O'Brien's Regasa, Special Purpose Vehicle or other companies like the Goodman Group companies which are registered in Luxembourg specifically to avoid paying tax on profits. In the letter I got from your own office this morning, Minister, it says that rent and interest that is a proper operating expense will be paid, quote, regardless of who the ultimate beneficiary is. I read that as an admission that some of this money is going to companies in Luxembourg that are set up to avoid paying tax. Can you confirm that is the case? How much is being paid? And again, will you publish the full cost breakdown so we can see for ourselves?
Respectfully, it's just not everything can be a scandal. I mean, what we're actually trying to do here is make sure that we had enough capacity in the Irish Health Service to deal with a wave that, thank God, didn't arrive so far. And I'm very grateful to the fact that a number of privately owned hospitals reached a not-for-profit, open book, cost-only arrangement with the state. I think there are a number of safeguards put into the agreement, including the fact the independent accountant's oversight, including the fact that the normal scrutiny that applies to the spending of taxpayers' money applies here in relation to the role of the Controller and Auditor General, the role of probably the most powerful, the only constitutionally named committee of this House, the Public Accounts Committee as well. And I've no doubt that members like yourself will ensure that that's exercised to the full extent. I was clear in my letter back that where fees or interest payments relate to the ongoing functioning of the hospital, they'll be included in the cost, but intra-company payments are excluded. And the rent and interest payments apply to pre-existing arrangements. So any rent or interest payment relating to the ongoing functioning of the hospital is to be paid under the agreement, but not intra-company arrangements. And I'm happy to continue to consider the issue in relation to the full cost statement. We do have to be conscious, though, of obviously commercial sensitivity, which is a legitimate issue for any business.
Question, whether the Minister has considered the request by the Irish Council for Civil Liberties effectively not to expand the Garda powers beyond the 18th of May and instead to rely on the overwhelming things that have an impact rather than these restrictions on civil liberties, which is education, persuasion, etc.
which allows me to set regulations. It's very clear in the statutory consultation process that I need to undergo, including liaising with people like the Chief Medical Officer, other relevant government ministers, before making a decision to extend or renew or alter regulations. I'll be going through that process. I do share the Deputy's view, though, that the people of this country have been incredible in responding, and we're always of the view that regulations are something that for the Gardaí to have in the exceptional circumstances, the very rare circumstances where they may need them, and I think that is the way they've policed them.